Hi, this is Mr. Mike for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center with episode 59, Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day. Thanks for joining me today. Very interesting thing to discuss today. Lots of different elements that go into today's segments, and we want to jump right into it. Otherwise, I could go on for an hour and a half. The animal we're going to talk about today was discovered in New Jersey in what is called a marl pit. Now, this was back in 1866, and the bones were sent to what was then just becoming a very famous paleontologist, just at the beginning of really getting worldwide fame for his work in paleontology. The name Edward Drinker Cope. Now, Edward Drinker Cope was from Philadelphia, and he had many colleagues in that scientific realm. Among those was Othniel Charles Marsh. He was out of New Haven, Connecticut, and he spent his time at the Peabody Museum, whereas Edward Drinker Cope spent his time at the Academy of Natural Science in Philly. So these two guys were friends, colleagues, compared notes with each other, and their history and their friendship, things just went bad. And one of the reasons things went bad was because they were both very learned scholars, very interested in discovering dinosaurs. Unfortunately, they were extremely aggressive, and it led to what we call the Bone Wars. And a couple of good things came out of the Bone Wars. Plenty of dinosaurs were discovered between these two gentlemen. The Bone War was actually, quote-unquote, won by Othniel Charles Marsh because he ended up having more discoveries. But Cope held his own and made his own share of hugely important and now famous discoveries. One of the discoveries that was famous at the time, which isn't so much now, discovered in New Jersey, is called Dryptosaurus. Now, Dryptosaurus was not its original name. This was 1866, and really there weren't that many dinosaurs named at that time, and he felt that it was a unique species, and he was correct in assuming that, but he didn't give it the name Dryptosaurus. He gave it the name Laelops. And Laelops, the specific name, Laelops aquilungus. Laelops aquilungus. Now, he took the name Laelops from a Greek mythological dog that apparently this dog, it always found its prey. And when he saw the bones of this animal that showed that it had some long claws, that it was carnivorous, and he likened it to the Megalosaurus, which we've talked about in previous episodes. So he was very sure that it was carnivorous. It looked a little bit like this animal. This is Synraptor. Looked very much like it, and the thing that made it look similar to this animal, this kind of looks like T-Rex, but look closely at the claws. See how many there are? There are actually 3 claws, and Dryptosaurus / Laelops had 3 claws too. And this doesn't exactly have extremely wimpy arms. I mean, by comparison to the body size, they're kind of slim, but they are not very short, like T-Rex might be. So they were a little bit longer arms. So Dryptosaurus / Laelops, that's how it was made. It was carnivorous, it was bipedal. It was about somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 to 25 feet long and maybe about 6 feet tall at the hips. So it was a pretty decent sized animal, not in the realm of T-Rex, but it was still a good size. And it was the second really known dinosaur to come from New Jersey, the first one being Hadrosaurus, which is a duck-billed herbivore. So Cope was very excited when he found this animal because now he could sort of pair a herbivore with a carnivore and say, yeah, this is telling us about the New Jersey landscape, quote unquote, what these animals, who they spent time with and who they attacked and who they ran from about the same time. So it was very exciting to find these 2 different animals in New Jersey. But New Jersey, it doesn't really pop into your head when you start thinking about dinosaur history, but it turned out to be very important. So anyway, let's give a look at what Edward Drinker Cope, how he illustrated this animal that at the time he was calling Laelops. This is Laelops or what we now know as Dryptosaurus, right in the center here. Kind of strange looking by today's standards of what we think dinosaurs looked like. Back here we have a couple of strange looking hadrosaurs, and Dryptosaurus / Lalops is taking a look at what Edward Drinker Cope believed a plesiosaur known as Elasmosaurus looked like. One of the big things that took place between the two gentlemen that I mentioned, Edward Drinker Cope and O.C. Marsh, was the reconstruction of the Elasmosaurus. Really upset these two. Edward Drinker Cope actually drew this picture. Here's an Elasmosaurus, the head here, and then it had this extremely long tail. At least that's what Cope thought. However, when he actually showed it to his buddy, O.C. Marsh, Marsh said, "My dear sir, you've gone and put the head on the tailbone." Because as it turns out, Elasmosaurus had a shorter tail and an extremely long neck, so his head should be up here. Well, this did not sit well with our friend Edward Drinker Cope, and this led to a lifelong feud between the two. So Dryptosaurus gets discovered. Okay, he calls it Lalops, but then something happened. They couldn't continue calling it Lalops because, turns out, that name was already used, and that name was used previously. I'm not sure how they found out, but obviously the fame of the Lalops discovery went out, and someone said, wait a second, there's already an animal that we've called Lalops after this Greek dog, and it was named, they named a bug, a small mite Lalops. So this took place, and guess who ended up renaming the animal? His nemesis, O.C. Marsh. So he actually named it Dryptosaurus. Can you imagine? You've gone and made the discovery, made the description, and then your nemesis comes up and says, we're going to... Well, the reason, another reason Dryptosaurus is so famous and should be known by everyone is because a very famous painting was done of it. And the painting was done by a gentleman called Charles R. Knight. Let's give you a look at Charles R. Knight. This is Charles R. Knight. And whether you know it or not, you probably have some knowledge of his artwork. Now, the interesting thing about Charles R. Knight was he was legally blind. He had to wear those glasses. He had an astigmatism, and then he had an injury to his right eye that left him very... he had a hard time seeing. But the paintings that he created were incredible. And he went on to create murals for several museums, among them the Peabody Museum with O.C. Marsh. And he did Age of the Dinosaur, a very famous painting that you'd recognize. So, anyway, Edward Drinker Cope went to Charles Knight and said, I need you to create a painting for my Lalops, which unfortunately is now named Dryptosaurus. So Charles R. Knight complied, and he came up with this. And they called it Leaping Lalops. Now, the reason this was such an important painting was because up till this time, we've basically said dinosaurs are slow, dim-witted animals, time in the water. Well, this picture does not depict that at all. This depicts them as active, agile, fast, and this was something brand new to paleontological science. So it's an extremely important painting that basically Cope said to Charles Knight, I need you to do something very interesting. So it's called Leaping Lalops, but it's actually Leaping Dryptosaurus, at least that's what we call it now. So important that the museum in Trenton, known as the New Jersey State Museum, commissioned someone to do a mount of Dryptosaurus and show it in the style of the Charles R. Knight painting. So here you are. There's the painting, and in 2014, the New Jersey State Museum put this on display. Look familiar? It should. So this is Leaping Dryptosaurus. You can go see it when the museum reopens. As I understand it, it's free admission. It sounds like a lot of fun. So three men involved in this. Charles R. Knight was the illustrator, the paleo artist, as it were, the discoverer and original describer, Edward Drinker Cope, and then, of course, O.C. Marsh that came in and ruined Cope's party by renaming it. So the animal was about 20 feet long, 22 to 25 feet long, 6 foot tall at the hips. The thing that made it interesting was the teeth. It did not have T-Rex teeth. It had long, sharp teeth, serrated teeth, unlike the giant banana-sized T-Rex teeth. But nonetheless, they were very sharp and very beneficial to a carnivore. Had 3 fingers, different than T-Rex, and on the 3 fingers it had these 8-inch claws. So it was definitely made to chase after animals. It's related to other animals known as Eotyrannus and Guanlong, both smaller versions of T-Rex. It probably had feathers. They surmised that it had feathers. So at any rate, that's the story that we have on Dryptosaurus / Lalops. Now, I do mention the Dryptosaurus in a poem from Volume 3 of Mr. Mike's Dinorific Poetry, illustrated by, you can see my son there in the green t-shirt amongst the other children. That's Ethan. So we will read you the poem that I titled New Jersey Dinosaurs. Here's a little depiction of New Jersey by Ethan. There you go. And right in the middle there, he's showing Haddonfield, which was where one of the discoveries were made. The discovery of actually the Hadrosaurus. New Jersey doesn't leap to mind when pondering Earth's past. Where dinosaurs once lived and died, New Jersey might be last. I'll tell you something now that could come as a big surprise, and if you learn these dino facts, you'll certainly be wise. The year was 1858, and William Parker Folk located and dug up a beast of stunning size and bulk. In Haddonfield, the bones were found in what was a marl pit. Amazingly, most bones were there, and once amassed, they fit. Then, Joseph Leidy lent his help and moved the dino west to Philadelphia, where the publicity was best. He named it Hadrosaurus, and in 10 years it became the first dino that's mounted, and it garnered instant fame. That's what the Hadrosaurus discovery looked like. Discovered in Haddonfield. And now we get to this. Another dinosaur that used to stalk the Garden State is feisty Dryptosaurus that had caused a great debate. He first was given Lalops as his name, but now no more. You can't reuse a bug's name that was given years before. He looked a bit like T-Rex, but his arms were fairly long. His hands, they too were larger and appeared to be quite strong. The animal's depiction in a painting by Charles Knight has helped transform our view from slow and dumb to fast and bright. The Dryptosaurus of what cool theropods can be set free from Jersey clay. So next time you're in Jersey, I suggest you stop to see the crucial dino finds that help explain Earth's history. The Dryptosaurus, part of New Jersey Dinosaurs, a poem by Mr. Mike, illustrated by my son, Ethan. There's Dryptosaurus, and you can see those decently sized limbs with the 8-inch claws. From Volume 3, Dinorific Poetry. I'm just amazed at the artwork that Charles R. Knight has done. This is Charles right here. Astigmatism, eye injury, had to wear glasses just in order to do his artwork. And here he is working with a Stegosaurus model. So we salute these pioneers of paleontology and thank them for their work, and we do our best to remember them. So hopefully you guys have learned something. This is Mr. Mike for episode 59 of Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day, brought to you by the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. We do this every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we post every video that we make on YouTube, and you can locate that at Mr. Mike Sgrignoli. So make sure you subscribe, and we'll do it again soon. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Rawr. Don't forget, Dryptosaurus, same thing.